Thank you for auditing the Always Positive New Music Review Show, hosted by a French professor who's going to be giving you a review of the new album 72 Seasons by somebody who's like not a Metallica fan. Now, I'm not like a Metallica hater. I'll discuss this in a second. I have a lot of appreciation for them. I've seen them in concert, all that. But I'm not like, a Metallica head. So, what does this 11th album mean to somebody who knows their music but doesn't love them? I want to talk about that, but before I do, there's a chance that you are one of those Metallica heads. They have some of the best fans in the world. A buddy of mine, Dean, he's seen them like 100 times in concert. You know what I mean? Just like they have some of the best fans in the world. So I want to give something to you, the hardcore Metallica fan. And I'm going to do something I don't do on this channel. I'm going to edit my video. Because yesterday I went to a very important spot here locally in Rochester, New York. And before I discuss the last Metallica album, let's talk about the first Metallica album. Tell me when you're gonna start.
Go.
Okay, so I am here at 120 East Avenue in Rochester, New York. This is basically where this album was recorded. I got this at the Record Archive, best record store in the country, Rochester, New York. That's where the album, Kill 'Em All, was recorded, right here. Now, if you watch interviews with the band, Lars Ulrich refers to it as Barrett Alley Recording Studios. And if you look right over here, come over here, you'll see that this little alley here is called Barrett Place. So I can't figure out if Lars is wrong, which he never is, or if it used to have a different name. If you look on the album cover, it says it's recorded at Music America Recording Studio. So that might have been what they changed it. Weirdly enough, at 230 East Avenue, down that way, is where Missy Elliott used to work with Jodeci way back in the day. And if you look online, you will see that that's the place where they recorded this. That's not the case. I know because I was at Record Archive and I was buying this album and I was talking to the lady behind the counter about this. And then the dude behind me was buying the new album, the album I'm about to review, and he was all like, no, it's Black Dog Studio. That's where they recorded it. And also, the dude still has the mixing board. So the mixing board that made this amazing album was right there. So this is Rochester history, Metallica. They should have a plaque. And there's Barrett Place. And just so you know, we're in the middle of like the second or third best music school in the country, Eastman School. So it's kind of cool to have that here as part of this music history. All right, my filmmaker is getting very cold. I'll tell you one more story that I'll have later on in the video about Metallica in Rochester. But let's talk about sort of my history with Metallica as somebody who really cares about music and wants to understand. And the way that I understand Metallica is through Bob Marley. Let me explain. A while ago, 20 years ago, I went on this trip with a couple friends of mine. I went to Florence, Italy, with two Jamaican friends of mine who are very big fans of reggae. And I just sort of always assumed that Bob Marley was like not the real deal. I just assumed that he was sort of the version of reggae that was loved and appreciated by the world, but like wasn't the real deal for the culture. And they just completely corrected me. And it's like to sort of dismiss Bob Marley is to a certain extent like being a rock and roll fan and dismissing the Beatles. Like you can do it, but it's mostly affect. So I say that because a while ago, I was talking to a bunch of friends of mine. Like I have a bunch of friends who are like really into heavy metal, like guys who are around my age in their mid 40s and grew up with heavy metal. And I've been around heavy metal my whole life, And I basically asked them the same question. Like, is Metallica like, are they important? Like, are they like, like a really important band? Or is it just that they hit it big? And I got the same response from, the gnarly metalheads with the hair down the back and the thin mustache, and that I got from my friend Trudy from Jamaica. Like, yeah, Metallica is it. Metallica is the Beatles of heavy metal. Metallica is the Bob Marley of heavy metal. If you want to understand the genre of heavy metal, of what it can do, of what it can say, you must understand Metallica. And so I asked them, I said, well, give me one album. Like, what is the one album? I asked probably 10 or 15 different Metallica fans, and 100% of them said Ride the Lightning. So I bought it on CD. You can see it here. I listened to it quite a bit. I really enjoy it. I really like it. And part of what makes Metallica so tricky, that's ugly actually. I like having just to Kill 'Em All back there. Part of what makes, see I told you I don't edit. Part of what makes loving or liking Metallica so difficult is when you are my age, when you are in your mid-40s, you know. Before the Black Album, I was aware of them as a cool, kind of dangerous rock band. You know, like I remember seeing Metallica spray painted on dugouts in Little League games, you know, right next to this great Aussie spray paint. You know, like I had sort of like Metallica and Ozzy in the sort of pantheon of suburban imagination. They were these great dark figures. You know, I remember seeing the album cover and Justice for All. I remember knowing the kids in middle school and early high school who wore Metallica stuff, and they were the really gnarly people. You know, they were the real metalheads. And then the Black Album came out. You cannot understand the oppression of the Black Album. No album in my lifetime has been so heavily inflicted upon me against my will. And I'm not even saying that I disliked any of it particularly, but it was everywhere. The only thing I could compare it to is Adele. I think it was 21, where it just seemed like, how many singles does this woman have? How much do I have to hear this? How much is this absolutely everywhere? It was just single after single after single. You know, I was watching MTV all the time, and it was just single. Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters, The Unforgiven, Wherever I Roam, Sad But True. And it just felt like everybody loved it. All of there was a... So I was in a band, but there was like basically a jock cover band of like the cool kids, like who were good at sports and also played music. And they basically just played the Black Album front to back, interspersed with cuts from Nevermind. And you know, this was just a weird way to really be exposed to Metallica as the biggest band in the world, as U2, but with longer hair, you know? And they already seemed old. You know, they seemed old to me. And I understand that they were much younger than I am now, but they seemed like sellouts. And I didn't even care about them before. I didn't know what Kill 'Em All was. I didn't know what Ride the Lightning was. I was aware of the song One because I had a double bass drum pedal, and that's the only song you're allowed to play when you have a double bass drum pedal and you're starting out. But, you know, it was fine. Like, all those singles are good, especially Sad But True. I love that song. I mean, You Can't Fight with Enter Sandman. It's like a perfect pop song. I don't care if it's heavy metal. The ballads, you know, that was sort of part of a late 80s, early 90s curse of metal ballads. But those are fairly good ones for that genre. And then a while ago, I was looking through my ticket stubs, which unfortunately are currently in a house of somebody who does not want to give me my ticket stubs back. But I saw that I went to a concert. I saw Metallica in concert at Great Woods Performing Center in Mansfield, Massachusetts in 1994, I want to say. And this is the weirdest thing, because I never did drugs, don't do drugs. My memory is super good. I don't remember this at all. And I understand that they are one of the best live bands in the world. I've watched performances. I've talked to that friend of mine, Dean, you know? I had neighbors next door who are huge metalheads. Probably the coolest metalheads I've ever known, because their entire family, like kids, parents, everything. Just a total heavy metal family. They would tell me how great they were. Somehow, I don't remember seeing them. So hopefully I'm going to see them this summer in Montreal. And if I do, I'll give you a little review. So that's sort of my history. And I tell you that history because I think, you know, it's easy to lose it. It's easy to lose track of how impressions of bands change, you know? I remember when the Napster conflict happened, when Metallica came out against peer-to-peer file sharing, and I remember thinking, yeah, they're probably right. I wasn't mad at them at all. I was like, yeah, this probably is bad for artists, and I think time has proven that Metallica were right. So let's kind of get into like what is it that makes a Metallica song? Because now that I've listened to this album a fair amount, obviously not on vinyl. I haven't opened it yet, and I've listened to this album a lot, and I've been exposed to a lot of other Metallica. So like, what are the components as I see them, and especially with this new album, that makes a Metallica song? Because this morning I was listening to the album and I was talking to my wife, and I just said, "God damn it, I think I love Metallica. I think I do. I think I really like Metallica." So at the very basis, and I wonder, okay, and tell me in the comments what you think. Now that I've studied Metallica to a certain extent, let me tell you what I think is the best component of their music. Okay? So you put in the comments what you think is the smash the like bucket and subscribe and all that stuff. The best thing is structure. Their song structures are so interesting. They have so many different interlocking parts. Parts that are sometimes like very like rhythmically intricate, that verges on the border of prog, but they always pull back. They're never too precious. They go almost full thrash, but then they pull back as well. And they interlock these parts and they develop these parts where if you're really listening to a Metallica song, you'll hear something and you just think it's and it is that, but at a certain point will be like extended out by 3 notes or something crazy. And like all these things are happening underneath and you could just listen and not pay attention, but it's this level of absolute detail. In preparation for this, I listened to a 1983 interview with Metallica that was recorded before they went to Music America Studios, before they went to Barrett Alley Studios. It was. I'll put a link in the description if I remember. It's an amazing interview. It's them in a car driving to New York. They're driving through New Jersey on the Jersey Turnpike. This is like they just fired Dave Mustaine. They just fired Dave Mustaine. They had just they were just about to record their first album. You could just Lars is blah 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 blah. Everyone else can get a word in edgewise. And it's great because they really outline a lot of things in that video that would go on. They explain that other bands, they just thrash and they know how to also go slow. And that going slow makes the fast parts feel better. That's a simple idea, but Metallica, especially on this album, especially on 72 Seasons, okay? I'm not just talking about the good old days, oh, how good Metallica was. You listen to this album and they know how to use song structure to make things so interesting. That interview also contains what could only generously be called fairly racist commentary from James Hetfield about recording in Queens, but he's a 20-year-old. Who knows? Dumb 20-year-olds who are drunk on beer in the back of a van say things which may not be good. It's interesting, though, to hear. So that's the structure. And a lot of it's based on that rhythm guitar that the lead singer and guitar player James Hetfield is playing. Just this great chugging guitar. While I was driving around with my daughter after she filmed me doing that video, and she's like, "Is this hard to play?" Because she's learning how to play guitar. I was like, yes and no. I mean, the notes aren't that hard. It's all there, but it's the rhythm and it's the strength of the rhythm, and it's often the odd time signatures of the rhythm that make it interesting. And then that's matched with the singing by James Hetfield. I mean, in our house, it's pretty common that one of us will just start saying, yeah, and then we just all say, yeah, for like 45 minutes. But it's funny because in that interview, they talk about, in 1983, before they record this album, they're talking about how they can't wait to get a real lead singer. Like, they didn't want him to be the singer, which is why I think he's the best singer, which is why I think Metallica has to be the best. Because they have a lead singer who didn't want to be a lead singer. So he's automatically totally subservient to the music writing, totally subservient to the rhythms. There's no sort of preening thing. Like in that interview, they said they didn't want Dave Mustaine there because he just was too busy getting girls. Like Hetfield and Ulrich, like they just have to be these workers who do it, and that's the way that his singing works. And sometimes he sounds like a satire, and this goes for his lyrics as well. Like I was alternating between 72 Seasons and Kill 'Em All while driving around with my daughter, and at times she's just like, "Is this a joke? Son of Darkness? Is this a joke? Is he joking? Is he having a laugh? And then the most important part of his singing is he always has some kind of hook. So I don't know if that's the songwriter in him. I don't know what that is. But it's not like he's singing hooks that are like, everybody's going to country farms, 1-800-54-GIANT. It's not that kind of hook. The kind of hook is just like a word, or a couple words repeated with a certain emphasis that somehow gets stuck in your head. Then we have to talk about the drumming. Lars Ulrich. He is, and I can only say this as a drummer who has been struggling with the ghost of Lars Ulrich my entire life, way better than I thought he was. I knew he was good and talented, and I was sitting there with my double bass drum pedal trying to play the one beat. I was trying to do that, and I thought that was the extent of his greatness. I was wrong. Lars Ulrich is so good because he's so damn cerebral. He does such smart, interesting things on his drum set. His drum parts are not like that flashy. They are flashy, okay? I couldn't play them even though I've been playing drums for 20 years. I don't have that kind of stamina. I don't have that kind of speed, right? But he does more than that. He has taste, and he has these ideas. And I think if that's a complicated idea to you, I don't blame you. You know, you might feel alienated as not being a musician. Just listen just to one thing, the snare. If you listen to the way he plays his snare with such deliberateness. It is almost like an entirely different instrument. It's almost like it speaks, but it's not speaking. It's speaking like to emphasize the emotion, to emphasize the intricacies of the song. It's a truly spectacular thing, and I have not appreciated that until this album, where I realize, oh man, I have been discounting him as a metal drummer. Then we get the lead guitars. Kirk Hammett is maybe my favorite musician just on earth, because he's a collector and he collects horror movie stuff. I don't collect horror movie stuff, but I've read his book that he wrote about horror movie collectibles, and I just relate to him on that level. But I think he has two kinds of solos. One is the melodic solo, where he's sort of emphasizing the melody of the song, and then the other is the nobody asked solo. Like almost every song, I think every song has two solos. One that's melodic, where like kind of cool, and then you know those memes like nobody : and then Kirk Hammett, just all the time, just these out of nowhere shredded guitar lines. And then we get to the bass player. He's sitting there. He's cool. He's not doing much. You know, compared to the bass solo that's on here, he's good. But it's funny because he's sort of at the point now of being like the drummer for Spinal Tap or the keyboard player for the Grateful Dead, just sort of like, or the bass player for the Rolling Stones for that matter. You know, just sort of like an always secondary figure because he's always new. Now, speaking of Spinal Tap, I think Spinal Tap is important to understand this Metallica album in the way that I'm perceiving it and the way it can sort of feel. The light is getting super weird in here. I hope you don't mind. I do live in Rochester, New York, and spring is weird here. It might even start snowing. I can't tell. So Spinal Tap, there's been one sequel to Spinal Tap, and there's another one in the works. But the best sequel to Spinal Tap is Some Kind of Monster, the documentary about Metallica. All the ego and clashes and misadventures that are dramatized in Spinal Tap are actually realized in Some Kind of Monster. But what I think is important is that Some Kind of Monster shows a band that's starting therapy and not succeeding. 72 Seasons feels to me like an album that is successfully gone through therapy. Also, I learned something that I think might help you. If you're one of those Metallica experts who's shaking your head because I just dissed Robert Trujillo, is that his name, the bass player? I saw Suicidal Tendencies in concert. I remember seeing them, okay? So, I'm not dissing on him. Just saying, he isn't very present on this album. So if you're a big fan, you know, Lars Ulrich is very arrogant and very insufferable. But I believe it's actually a cultural thing. So if you've ever been to Denmark or if you've ever known Danes, they have a reputation as being arrogant, but there's a problem with this. It's that they earn their arrogance. Like, Denmark is an amazing civilization that supports its people, cares for its people, encourages science and art. And when you're in Denmark and when you're hanging around with successful Danes, you're just sort of in a sort of bitter awe. Just like, damn. It's like Lego, you know? Like, Lego is like the greatest toy ever. And sometimes Lego is so perfect and so well made, it just makes you weep because you're like, why are toys this good? To a certain extent, that kind of arrogance is not even arrogance. It's just a specific cultural posture of like, well, why pretend to be humble when I think that I'm doing something well? So I think that's a lot of what it is, because Lars actually lived for years in Denmark. That just might be a more sympathetic way to think about him being a jerk. That he's just not American. He doesn't have that American sense of politeness, that American sense of forced humility. Also, with Spinal Tap, I'm thinking about the line from the manager. Would you say they're less popular? No. I just think that their appeal is becoming more selective. My main issue with this album is who's it for? I can't tell. As far as I can tell, this album is not for the young people. It's for that cool guy who is in line at the record archive behind me. I think he was buying an Anthrax album as well, and he had all the information on where they recorded Kill 'Em All. Cool guy, he had like glasses, he's well put together. He seemed like a cool guy, cool older metalhead guy. That's who I think this is for, and I don't think there's any shame in that. That said, my newborn baby, 7 months old, loves this album. I put her on my lap and we pretend to drum together, and she loves it. So who knows? Maybe this is for babies. Sorry, I'm trying to fix the light here. I'm like getting all washed out now. So let's finally actually talk about this album, right? I've read a little bit of Metallica talking. I'm just going to back up a bit so the light's a little bit less intense. Okay. Is that better? I think so. I'll put that there too so you can be reminded. Have a little sip of water. I'm not going to edit this out. That's coffee. It's not water. I was expecting water. For this album, I read some of the discussion about how it was made. And it's pretty funny, because like they announced it in 2019, and then there were some more announcements in 2020. In 2021, James Hetfield said it was glacial. But the thing about this album that I think is great is that it feels free. Like I've listened to some of Metallica's projects after the Black Album and before this one, and they just feel up in their head. Like they feel like they are trying to answer the question, what is Metallica? What is Metallica? Oh yeah. Like what are we? What even is a Metallica? And this album doesn't feel like that. In a way, I think it pairs pretty nicely with Kill 'Em All. It just feels like it's just Metallica. And this is that thing I was talking about, the feeling like it's after therapy. It feels like therapy is over. They're doing better. They're making music. They're just making music. And listen, I'm a classic rock head, I love the Beatles and the Stones and all that. This album came out 40 years ago? 40 years ago? 40 years ago? 40 years after, like, the Rolling Stones started? What, they started in 65? We're talking the albums that the Stones released in 2005? It was garbage, 40 years on, most classic rock bands, with the exception of, like, Neil Young, are all garbage. So props to Metallica for making an album which is super solid. And all those things I talked about, with the way that Metallica is great, all the modular parts, the way that it rocks, and the general theme of the album, I guess, James Hetfield said that it's called 72 Seasons because that's the first 18 years of our lives, 4 seasons each. We are told who we are by our parents, pigeonholing around what kind of personality we are. The most interesting part of this is the continued studies of these core beliefs and how it affects our perception of the world today. Most of our adult experiences is a reenactment or reaction to these childhood experiences. Prisoners of childhood are breaking free of the bondages we carry. Amen. James Hetfield, what is his... It's not Hetfield. It's Hetfield, right? James Hetfield. Now I'm up in my head. James is right. Jimmy H is right. Not Jimmy Hoffa. He's under Giant Stadium. James Hetfield is right. This is one of the most profound and true things you can figure out when you go to therapy. Much of our adult experience is a reenactment or reaction to those childhood experiences. If you're in a good therapist session, it is half the time is you with your arms folded being like, shut up. This isn't having to do with my kid, with being a kid. Shut up. This has nothing to do with my parents. Shut up. This isn't. No, you're boring. You're boring. I'm sorry. You're boring like I'm boring, like James Hetfield's boring, like every single human being on planet Earth is boring. Most of your psychological problems go back to how you were parented. The end. And there should be more music about that. And apparently that's what this album is about. I would be lying if I said that came through super clearly in the lyrics. I don't know. It could be because it's hard to listen to his singing without kind of laughing, because there's a kind of goofy earnestness to the way he sings. If there's a problem with the album, it's a little bit long. It is. It's a slog. But it's so well made, it doesn't really matter. And then here I'm going to do something controversial. I'm going to compare it to Kill 'Em All. Okay. I think it's better. So, you're pissed. Now listen. I'm not saying it's better than Ride the Lightning. That's crazy talk. But listening to these albums back and forth, they are at least comparable. Now, of course, this is rough and raw, and you cannot recreate that rough and raw sound of recording or getting drunk on Genny Cream Ale in Rochester, New York in 1983. No, obviously, But like the drumming on 72 Seasons is way more interesting, much less kind of annoying ride cymbals. The songwriting is more interesting. The guitar playing is more interesting. The singing is better. So yes, it lacks whatever. There's no song as good as, Seek and Destroy or whatever. But there's a real evolution in the band. And it does what good evolution does, which is you hear this in 72 Seasons, but then you also feel the maturity. This is them acting out those pains and those feelings and getting drunk and la 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 la, yeah. And then now they're trying to process through that. This album also contains what I call the Hammett paradox. Kirk Hammett, the guitar player, lead guitar player. The more I like a song, the less I like his interventions, his solos. But then the less I like a song, the more I like his solos. I can't really explain it, but that just happens to be the way that it is. So, I like Metallica. That's my conclusion. 72 Seasons, that's going to be my stamp. Click above the hammer. Metal Up Your Ass, by the way, was a much better title. I do think it's too bad that they didn't use that original title. They sold out in the very beginning. I like Metallica before 83, actually. Frankly, I never accepted Cliff as a bass player. You know what I mean? Like, he was just the new guy to me. So, 72 Seasons is the opening track, and this is all that modular metal glory, like chugging guitar, the slightly open hi-hat. What I love is the way the guitar is punching over it, hitting different notes to emphasize. Eventually, Lars brings in the cymbals on certain notes. This lead guitar comes in to play this slightly truncated melody riff. Then we get to a super high beats per minute bit, and this is where I'm like headbanging with my baby, you know what I mean? And then it slows down to the standard riff, so many parts. And what's cool, and this is what I'm talking about, listen to Lars, because the singing comes in with these snares. Beating on the Russell Mountain. Now, I thought they said, beating off a rubber band. That's what I heard them say. They're not saying beating off a rubber band, which doesn't make sense anyways. But I didn't know. Feeding off the rubber band. That's what I'm talking about. It's that speaking hi-hat. And then a very Metallica-like pre-chorus, staring into black lights. Sounds like it could be off the Black Album. And then the chorus is really, really high BPM, very, very fast, like one of those original parts. But the voice is creating these hooks with just wrath of man, violence, inheritance. Oh. Then there's like a post-chorus thrash bit, and then we get the melodic guitar solo. And then we get this cool, that snare trick, and then going into the second verse, and it's kind of nice because it's like a little bit more melodic, a little bit production details on there. The best lyric of the album, Blinded by the Ashes of the Past. Hey, I've been clowning on James Hetfield the whole time, but that's a good lyric. That's a better lyric than I ever wrote, so who am I? I'm some guy who's beating off a rubber band. Doing, doing, doing. Then they get the second chorus and then the bridge. And I like the bridge because it's doing that kind of like punctuated rhythms as well. They're such a great band for like just rhythms. Just they're so, and it's because they're tight. It's because they're a band that's been playing together for 40 years, plus the guy from Suicidal Tendencies. They've been playing together for so long. Another guitar solo, not particularly happy with this solo. It's fine. It's just nobody asked. Then somehow the bridge that should be the epic ending is not the epic ending. It goes back into another verse and chorus, and that's maybe how the album's a little bit too long. Wrath of Man, leeching through, split into, Wrath of Man, crash into, a point of view, Wrath of Man, violence, inheritance, Wrath of Man, thrive upon, feeding on, 72 seasons gone, a beating off a rubber band. Great song. Shadows follows the next song, kind of playful, the chugging guitar, and it's kind of like almost like a call and response with the guitar. This is the only song where I would potentially apply the insult stock. It's stock. It's a little stock Metallica. Still, I love the hook, Hetfield's line, still my shadows follow. It's not Hetfield, right? It's Hetfield. I can just read his name right here. Hetfield, yeah. That's what I thought. I've been saying that the whole time, haven't I? Yeah, let's turn them around so you can... Hey, let me take that off. There you go. See, you can have them stare at us from the back. I always thought that James Hetfield looks like a lion. He also looks like my friend Paul from high school, who was a Metallica fan. Now, he's a cop. But he's a really good guy. So if anyone I knew, anybody in my life that I ever met who I'd want to be a police officer, it's probably Paul. Anyways, very kind of catchy riff here. I love there's like a double guitar bit that's quite nice. Another blistering solo. Cool, like bendy guitar notes towards the end. Then we get to the song Screaming Suicide with sort of a cheesy guitar lead. Settles nicely into a double bass drum, pedal stuff. Is this really Hetfield singing? Like, the singing sounds so different. I mean, I know he's been taking voice lessons, but it actually sounds good and different, The goofy riff from the beginning comes back later, and it's actually kind of nicer later on. Just, the thing about Hetfield is he's just not afraid to just give you cheesy lyrics with so much earnestness. Keep me inside. My name is Suicide. Whoa. His name is Suicide. Keep me inside. Why not? Sleepwalk My Life Away. It's fine. This is a fine one. Kind of a simple, maybe this is a bass lead. It could just be a low guitar. Cool kind of stutter step moment. There's a thing with the guitar where you can kind of go like, to create kind of a stutter step as it goes between the pickups, and it does that. It also does do I have a pick around here? I guess I don't have a pick. Anyways, a thing with a pick where it goes down like that. It kind of does that little trick in the back if you're listening carefully. The drums are just thumping, the closed hi-hat playing quarter notes. This does sort of remind me of Enter Sandman, and the theme is Sleepwalk My Life Away. I don't know. Goofy-ass lyric, should I fall up or down? But I actually kind of like it. Another Hammett Paradox. I love him in this song. I think he's awesome. I think the guitar solo is better. I think the post-solo moment's better. There's these spidery, crunchy guitar notes, metal groove. It's like he's awesome. This is a song I like less, but I love him more. Love you. Wonderful. Frankenstein collecting bastard. Next song is called You Must Burn. This is funny because when I listened to it the first time, I was at the gym, on the elliptical. I think I was watching a Newcastle game. And like the opening riff, I was just like sick of it. I'm like, all right, enough. I've had enough of this ominous opening and then settling into a crunchy groove, all that stuff and the metal. And I was just tired of it. And then this morning, I played this song. And I just loved it. I could not wait to hear the song enough. So what does that tell you? I guess the familiarity breeds love, but who knows? He sounds almost like Ozzy, the way he sings this. Sort of a cringy hook that redeems itself. So the line, who is the next witch you must burn? And then later, this is a spoiler alert for the album, by the way. If you haven't listened to 72 Seasons, don't watch the rest of this video, okay? This is a spoiler alert. You're looking for the next witch to burn? You are the witch. Bro, my name is Suicide. You are the witch. still. There's such awesome stuff going on with the instrumental bits here. There's this like, the melody plays and this chuggy cool rhythm, and there's like this harmonized voice, another awesome hammock guitar solo where like he starts playing these blistering notes over these descending guitar lines, and it gets fast and noodly, and the stuff behind it is back, and it's like a full minute of a guitar solo, and all of it's interesting and good. Next song is called Lux Eterna, Eternal Light. I don't like this song. I don't like it at all. I don't know. That's okay. It's okay, I guess. It's not stock. It doesn't sound like a stock Metallica song, but I don't actually particularly care for it. I don't know. It's got these fast descending lines, cool kind of tap lick whammy bar solo. So, tap licks is where I'm playing Eruption by Van Halen right now. You just can't hear it because it's not plugged in. And then kind of whammy down, like kind of doing that stuff. I like Kirk Hammett. I just really do. I like that part. But the song in general is not great. Fortunately, Crown of Barbed Wire is great. Toms being played and chugging guitar. The snares hitting the quarter notes now instead of the hi-hat. I wonder if it's sort of in conversation with Kendrick Lamar, because he had this whole thing with Crown of Thorns, and here we have Crown of Barbed Wire. So tight, this Crown of Barbed Wire. This is one of the songs where my daughter was like, is she kidding? This whole album's so long that I realized it's sort of long in sort of a very modern way. Kind of like the way a Drake album is super long. To a certain extent, you're just sort of in a vibe. You're just in a Metallica vibe. So, why not? There's a cool instrumental bit here, about 3 minutes and 30 seconds bit, where these like 4 notes are played and then joined in with the whole rest of the band, and then Lars just goes into this just stupid awesome backbeat behind everything, and then this guitar solo. This is like, I cannot wait, okay. If I had to choose between going to go see Metallica play Ride the Lightning all the way through next month, or whatever, next summer, I would rather them just play this one song, Crown of Barbed Wire, because I'm very excited to hear how they put this all together in this little moment. It's just great. This is why I think I'm becoming a Metallica fan. Chasing Light. Without darkness, there is no light. This is therapy rock. Cool kind of bridge with a different riff. And then before we get to If Darkness Had a Son, how about we have another Rochester rock story, okay? Let's find out how Metallica got their t-shirts. I'm going to put this in the middle of the video to give you the second part of the Rochester tour. I have to get my daughter home because we're hungry, but you'll see this is beautiful downtown Rochester, right near where the first Metallica album, Kill 'Em All, was recorded. If you listen to some interviews with the band, they say that they would drink too much beer and get really sick. There is a kind of beer called Genny Cream Ale, which is known as a Genny Screamer by the locals. That's probably what they were drinking. But there's also, in addition to having the best music store to buy music in the country, the best store in the country to buy guitars and gear is also in Rochester, New York. It's just a little bit north, and it's a place called Irondequoit. And the name of the guitar store is House of Guitars. I mean, all sorts of people went there. Like Hendrix got gear from there. It's this total mess.
Michael Jackson was there.
Was he?
Yeah.
It's like this huge mess of a place. Like there's just guitars stacked up everywhere. The old hippie dudes who started it still run it. And the story goes that when Metallica was here recording Kill 'Em All, they lived down the street up there in Irondequoit. And when they had to do laundry, they did it at a laundromat near House of Guitars. So they would go into House of Guitars and just kind of shred and play, because they're real serious musicians who have good chops, And they're sitting there and they're playing. And apparently the Schoenbook brothers, the guys who own the store, they felt so bad that they gave them House of Guitars t-shirts that they could wear. And the cool thing is, I've bought a couple guitars from House of Guitars, and when you buy a guitar, they still give you a t-shirt. Isn't that right, camera person?
Yeah.
Yeah. The camera person got a guitar recently, and from House of Guitars, and camera person got the t-shirt too.
It is.
So, really, if you love music, it's a good reason to come to Rochester, if for no other reason than to see where they recorded Kill 'Em All, and a good guitar store and music store. All right, we'll get back to my stupid video. Only real Metallica fans have House of Guitar t-shirts. So the next song is called If Darkness Had a Son, and it's a funny title. It's a funny idea. If darkness had a son, here I am. temptation is my father. But who cares? Like, who cares how goofy the lyrics are? I don't even care anymore. I used to think of the earnestness and the on-the-nose nature of Hetfield's lyrics as a detriment, but I actually think they're a feature because, like, why not? Why not sing on the nose? It doesn't even matter. He's not even that lead singer. I love that. He's not. Like, they're just still waiting to find the right lead singer. It's been 40 years. They're going to get someone eventually. Obviously, whoever this guy is who's been singing for the past 40 years and whatever, 80 million albums sold, he's not the actual guy, so who cares? What I like about this song, this is the most avant-garde song on the album because it has kind of a click track and it plays along with the click track and layering on top of it. It's sort of avant-garde. I'm going to say something else that's going to piss off Metallica fans. I listened to that Lulu album, the one with Lou Reed. And it's fine. It's good, actually. The problem with it, I imagine if you hate it, it's because you're a Metallica fan. It's a Lou Reed album. And Lou Reed's albums for the last 20 years of his life are very challenging. Like, he just sort of didn't... he never cared, you know? I mean, he didn't really ever... He did care, but he cared less about what you thought about his music. And he just did what he wanted to do. And it's a very good example, to me, of a Lou Reed album. And I think it's nice having Metallica in the background. So Lulu is good, actually. I do love the guitar work on here as well. And there's a very cool bit where the guitar kind of just is doing this little curling in the back. Too far gone is an interesting question. Am I too far gone? This is one that I liked a lot more on the second listen than the first, especially the harmonized guitar bit. It's sort of excellent, and more of these great deliberate snares. Room of Mirrors. I like the different parts here. There's a lot of very distinction part between them. You Might Set Me Free, kind of an odd ending, singing, and then this rolling double bass drum. Did I skip a song? No, I didn't. And then the next song, Innamorata. A cover of the Iron Butterfly song. I'm joking. It's a very agreeable final song. It's 11 minutes long, but it doesn't feel that way. When I saw that it was going to be 11 minutes long, I was like, oh God. They're going to do like Jazz Odyssey. This is going to be just interminable. But it wasn't. It actually is over. I'm kind of like, oh, I'm surprised it's over. Kind of a Black Sabbath-y riff and sort of like real singing. You know, they finally got a real singer who came in to sing this last song. His name is Jimmy Hetfield, and he's doing a great job. Misery, she kills me, ooh, but I am this war. Misery, she fills me, oh no, but she's not what I'm living for. So it's interesting about this conflictual relationship that he has with Misery. I've been clowning on Hetfield's lyrics the whole time, but he is doing a better job of describing like human growth than most artists have ever done. He's actually talking about how to confront the demons of your childhood and how to move past them. So I'm clowning on him, but secretly these are some of the best lyrics that I've ever heard because I relate to them where I am in my life. You know, this would have been my dad's 83rd birthday. He died 2 months ago, something like that. I'm in a very weird place emotionally, and a lot of it's coming to terms with the ways that he screwed me up, you know? And, but that's okay. Like, I'm coming to terms with it. You know, misery kills me and misery fills me, but it's not what I'm living for. And I was able to process the grief and the difficulty of growing up with a difficult man and then kind of move on with my life. So I'm clowning on Hetfield because he is so earnest and so honest. But he speaks to me in a way that most singers don't. So, who shall be clowned upon? There's like a second here where you hear the bass. It's true. He's playing by himself. I guess it had to be the 11-minute song. It leads into this beautiful double guitar harmonized melody play. It's just awesome. So there's my review. There's my take on Metallica for non-Metallica fans. Maybe Metallica fans like this too. I don't know. But come to Rochester, New York. Got the best record store, best guitar store, 17th best music reviewer. All right. Until next time, there's the camera.